Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Collaboration Conversations. I am so excited this week to have with me two very special folks. The first one is my guest co host, Mohammed Kasujee. Right, Mohammed? I'm getting
Spot
closer
on.
and closer.
Better each time, Regina.
Awesome. So, Mohammed, as I said, is our guest co host this week. As you know, my co host is out for a little while, Pearl Cox, and we're looking forward to her return. In the meantime, we have some amazing guest co hosts joining us. So, Mohammed is a career coach as well. He helps clients maximize their careers. And we've had a couple of wonderful discussions around that. And I'm looking forward to learning more about that today and how he collaborates in that process. So, Mohammed, will you tell us just a little bit about yourself and then we'll introduce our guest?
Absolutely, Regina. Thank you so much for having me as a co-host. I really appreciate it. I guess in summary, in the fewest amount of words, I'm a life coach pretending to be a career coach. And what I spend my time doing is helping people make ambitious transitions, usually from a job into a new job or a business. And that's the first conversation of many that leads into a wider conversation about life and how they show up in the world. So I love what I do. I don't consider it a job. I consider it my career calling. And every day is an amazing one, especially where I'm getting the chance to talk to people and spread my message.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mohammed. And thanks so much for agreeing to be my co host today. And then we have our guest. He's in the hot seat today. Our guest is Disco Dave Wynn. Now, listen to this, folks. He sets people on fire through mindset and music. I can't wait to learn more about that. And if you've noticed, he's been kind of bopping around a little bit. He's got that music going in his head, if not somewhere else. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you. It's great to be here. A real pleasure. I really appreciate the invite to join you today. This is going to be a lot of
Awesome.
fun.
Tell us a little bit about your journey and who you serve and who what you do.
Yeah, so similar to Mohammed, I live with a great sense of purpose every day through the work that I do. I have the deep privilege to work with entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders to help them to, well, discover their own deep sense of purpose, become
Mhm.
who they really want to be, and own their identity around that. Identity ownership is one of my pillars. It's been core to my experience in life and business. And I discovered coaching about 6 years ago, and it felt like I'd finally found my thing or the thing. And then more recently, in the last couple of years, I started to combine music and coaching together. And it's just been the most wonderful thing, so authentic to me. I've been a DJ for 20 years. The reason
Okay.
why I go by the name Disco Dave is because that was a nickname that I got given way back when. But more recently, I learned that disco is Latin for I learn, which
Ah,
is the most perfect thing when this is fundamentally what we do in coaching. It's the whole process of self-discovery, helping people to learn. And even beyond that, discovering that my name, Dave or David, is Hebrew for beloved. When you put the two together, I learned to be loved. That is really at the heart of what I
wow, that's powerful, Dave. That is powerful.
do.
And
Mm-hmm.
going from DJ to business coach, that's awesome. And it's obvious looking at you that you're passionate about what you're doing. That,
Oh, yeah.
it's yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, see that whole body nod.
I know. It's like how my littlest girl, Sophie, it's how she nods, like the whole body.
Yeah, a whole body nod. That just really came through. So tell us a little bit of how you use music in your coaching. I'm really curious about that.
So I use it in a very specific and intentional way. So when I was first introduced to the idea of combining music and coaching a few years ago, but and that was through another coach, actually. She provoked me into considering what might that look like. And it took me about 2.5 years to really start to figure out what that would look like for me and through my work. And it came through a series of realizations, conversations, insights, accidents, experiences. And one of the biggest insights I had around this was remembering that in coaching, we as the coach, we don't bring the content. So when I applied that to the idea of combining music and coaching together, I realized, well, then it's not about me being the DJ. It's not about me bringing the music. It's about the people I spend time with and their music. And music then being a tool for insight.
Interesting. Very interesting. I'm sure we're going to have more conversations around that, you and I. So, Mohammed, how did you meet Dave? How did the two of you come to be associated with one another?
It's a great pleasure to have known Dave for the period that I have. We've both been fortunate enough to be in a coaching program, and it's quite interesting that the topic of your conversations, Regina, in this space is about collaboration, because how me and Dave really got to know each other wasn't just in the context of the coaching calls that we were having bi-monthly, but actually collaborating and having conversations periodically in the subsequent weeks between coaching calls, and just talking to each other, talking coaching, even doing some coaching on each other. And that opened up a wonderful space for both to get to know more about each other and learn. And I have to say, one of the reasons that I've grown massively in the last few months or so that I have is definitely because of the conversations that me and Dave have had in a coaching capacity.
Fantastic. That's awesome. I love also that you brought in that power of being coached. You know, I mean, we're all coaches on this call, right? But we all know the power of having a coach. We've all invested in having coaches, right? We'll keep the dollars, you know, the dollar amounts, we'll keep that out of the picture. But we know we've all invested probably heavily in having coaches to help us get to where we are and to help us see. So let's take that aspect of a coach and the person they coach. I guess that would be the coachee. Is that right? The collaboration that occurs between the coach and the person that they're coaching. Any thoughts on that?
I think that's really fascinating in the sense that how I see coaching personally is co-creation, partnership, similar to how Dave talked about music. The coachee brings the ideas, brings the questions, bring the insight. They bring the music, so to speak, and the coach comes together with the client and uses those ideas to ask the right questions, press the right buttons, play devil's advocate when necessary, and almost create a space where those ideas and those questions and those thoughts can create a new possibility, whether it's a new goal, whether it's a new idea. And that's the beauty of coaching, and that's how I see it. It's definitely a co-creation. It cannot happen without the coach, it cannot happen without a client. Those two have to come together to truly create something beautiful.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Dave, any comments on that?
Yeah, I love a baking metaphor around this.
Okay.
So coaching is when you're together, it's a bit like baking a cake. Except you don't just bake one cake. Together, you bake two cakes.
Oh, nice.
And the coachee gets to take one of their cakes away. And that cake is filled with possibility, wisdom, insight, provocation, questions, things that they can then lean into outside of the experience. But the magic of coaching is that the coach gets a cake for themselves as well, because we get to learn through the experience as much as the coachee does, as long as we're willing to sit with questions such as, what did we learn from that experience? What am I noticing here? What did I do well? What could I have done better? there's always
Right.
opportunities to take something away as the coach as much as there is for the coachee. So
Yes.
I love that as a metaphor. For me, it's quite
You,
powerful.
you actually took my next question and answered it before I could ask it. That's exactly where I was going, is the growth that comes to us as a coach every time we coach someone, right? We grow. We benefit from that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I feel I get so much joy and energy from this work. Because
Yes.
every time I call it work, I hesitate because it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like
Because
it,
it
you know?
doesn't feel like work, does it?
Exactly. And I've never done something professionally where I have consistently been able to apply my learning all the time. It's like you're a kid in the sweet shop. You're
Yes.
constantly given these insights and tools and things that you can use and see how they work in action and practice them and see what works, see what
Yep.
doesn't work, keep hold of the stuff that does work, but also keep in mind the stuff that doesn't work because that might work with someone else, and it's magic. It's really
It
amazing.
is. It is. I've told this story many times, and so forgive me, listeners, if you've heard it before, but frequently when getting off the phone with a client or off of a Zoom call or whatever, and you're so excited, right? When that call goes well and you just, it, you see what they're going to do, right? You see how they're going to move forward. You see there's so much excitement. And my husband is retired, and I will go find him in the house and say, have I ever told you I love what I do? No, honey, never heard that before. But you can't contain it. You've got to share it, right? It's just so awesome. You have to voice it to someone, or go out in the middle of the street and jump up and down or something. You've got to let it out.
But equally, do you not find though, when you have an experience that doesn't create that same sense of excitement and energy, that because we can have these different experiences and these contrasting experiences, that there's always something to learn and then take
Absolutely.
excitement from that learning. Like I have
Yeah.
this experience called music mapping, which is where I combine music and coaching together. And I did a session recently with a gentleman, and it just didn't feel like there was much of an impact to it. And I remember I was standing in my kitchen afterwards, just frustrated, thinking, why was that? Like, this is usually a really profoundly impactful, highly enjoyable, highly emotive experience. Yet it really didn't feel like it. And I came to this realization that, okay, he's just not my people. This just wasn't his thing. And that
Exactly.
learning, being able to sit with that discomfort, then the insight emerges. Like, do you find that too?
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Mohammed? Do you have some experiences to share on that plane?
Completely agree. I was thinking about the cake analogy and how the coach also has a cake, and I think something that our coach, mine and Dave's coach, Chris Joseph, really talks about is looking for clients who really inspire you and who really push you to be your best version of yourself. And I think that's a massive component of that. To as the coach, to become a better person, to improve or level up at the end of the process, it requires clients, it requires individuals who are not only your people, who are your tribe,
Yes,
but also ones who really motivate you and inspire you to show up as your best self, to put in
I
the work, the
agree.
research, the preparation. And I think that's equally as pivotal.
It is. I tell my group coaching clients, I say, put on your asbestos shoes because I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. But they hold my feet to the fire as well. I got to have my own asbestos shoes because they definitely hold my feet to the fire, and they make me better at what I do. And so again, it's collaborative, right? It's not teacher student, it's collaboration. And it's collaboration within the group as well as with each individual to me, and me to them. So yeah. Dave, question for you. What are some of the ways that you've used collaboration to grow your business or grow yourself?
I guess I use it all the time. I think about collaboration, particularly in the context of partnerships, as really worthwhile doing when they are exponential. So when 1 + 1 = 11.
Yeah.
So you're bringing people together, and what you can create together is far more than the sum of what you would create individually.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, the Heart-Centered Leaders business that I created with my business partner, Gillian, I would have never have gone and done that on my own. We both have our own zones of genius that complement each other. So there have been aspects of the business that we've been able to own because, this is my zone over here. I can focus on the things that I'm great at, and Gillian's been able to focus on the things that she's great at over there.
Yeah.
So, I think if you're going to collaborate with anyone, for me, that thought has got to be front and center. That what are you going to create together? What is possible if you come together?
Yes.
Like staying in that state of possibility. And if it's not there, then that's a sign that perhaps, that's not a collaboration to pursue.
Yeah. And I think when possibility is done right, it is euphoric. It just, when you, yeah, exactly, Dave. Perfect. Completely agree. Yeah. Mohammed. Yeah, it just leaves you speechless sometimes, folks. It just, just like you just gotta soak it in. Mohammed, what's one of the greatest collaborative ventures, events, relationships, whatever, that you've experienced?
I think there's so many. It's you're really making me kind of reel back. I think one of the most recent ones I had actually was with a client that I was working with who came to me. He was a police officer, and a very senior police officer who had just got very fed up with the status quo of how things were in his work. He'd become disillusioned and wanted a change, but didn't really know what he wanted to do and why. We were able to come together and collaborate on a co-partnership of creating a future that excited him, not only in a sense of work, but more importantly, holistically with life and family and so on and so forth. From a period of massive uncertainty, we were able to come to a conclusion that a career in consulting was what he really wanted to do. And relatively short period of time, perhaps kind of 2.5 months end to end in total, he was able to secure a role with one of the big four, which was absolutely incredible, and his life completely transformed.
Wow.
And what was amazing was I, as the coach, could only provide the framework and the system and the guidance. It was for him to actually implement the action. And it truly was a co-creation and a partnership in that regard, which was amazing. And it truly was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had, because I was able to bring my ideas and my vision and my strategies, but someone who was able to take that, shape it into their own, and then implement it. And more importantly, to get a truly profound result was incredible. So I'd have to say that's one in recent memory that really sticks to mind.
Wow. And yeah, absolutely.
I was going to ask Dave actually the similar sort of question based on his cake analogy.
Please.
I was quite curious to know, Dave, what's the best cake that you've ever baked with a client?
I love that.
Oh my word. I feel like I'm baking all the time. I mean, I was with a couple of clients this morning, and one of them, he's 4 years into running a business, and business is doing incredibly well. They've quadrupled their turnover in the last year, went from 300K to 1.6 million, on track to do 2 million. He's had some real challenges in his personal life. And at the moment, he's in this space because they've just gone through this mental busy period, and he's just exhausted. I mean, mentally, emotionally, physically, and he's questioning, what to do with the business. And he was just in this real, real state of scarcity in our conversation. Because I asked him, what will be most helpful to talk about today? And he said the business. And we had a conversation around that. And he felt like there was only two options to proceed, because they have this busy period twice a year. And then the rest of the period's quite flat. But really, that's the time where they need to be focusing on creation. And he couldn't see that. He was seeing from his scarce lens that the only options in the near future were two choices. One was for their staff to take on more responsibility for part of the nature of their business, which is it's manpower. So taking on some of the hours that they would typically pay for, or they would go down to a 4-day week. And he hadn't even considered, because he was just in such a closed mindset, so stressed, so low in energy, that by thinking from an abundant perspective, what could they create? All these new possibilities emerged. And It's just, it never fails to amaze me, the power of, a really deep, interested conversation where you can support someone from a place where they're limiting themselves unintentionally, but just being able to hold that space for them, reflect back, how they're being, and share a new possibility for how they can be, and then just seeing the energy emerge and what new things, what new possibilities and actions that they can take. It's awesome. I love it. It's just the deepest privilege to be able to do this work. When you got someone, the amount of times I've been in conversation with clients and they've been, on the verge of giving it up, packing it in, shutting down the business, and then in the space of a conversation, they're ready to take on the world. It is amazing.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. It's that, there's multiple aspects to what you just talked about, Dave. There's so many things we could unpack there. One of the things that really excites me is the ripple effect. And that as we help someone get that clarity and make those changes in their life, their business, whatever, then they go out and impact the rest of the world. Another point that you brought out is the clarity as a coach that you can help them achieve, that getting past the overwhelm, achieving that clarity of vision, seeing those possibilities, that when you walk in with that open to possibilities attitude, how you can instill that and help them see beyond their current vision. It's powerful. Powerful.
Yeah, I came up with this idea of something I call the spectrum of possibility. So this was early on in my coaching career, because I came out of my coach training full of zeal and excitement and, let's go and change the world.
Yeah.
And because in coach training, you're taught to start with vision and what's possible, 10 out of 10.
Right.
My experience, or those other experiences, were that many people I was connecting with and in coaching conversations with, they couldn't imagine a really powerful vision for themselves.
Right.
Because they were so entrenched in their limitations that it was almost like they were in a kind of black hole of comfort.
Yes.
So like at this end of the spectrum,
I don't like that, but it makes sense.
Yeah, right.
I don't like it in that I don't want anybody to be there.
You get it, right? They're completely in the dark. They can't see over the event horizon.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just so in it. Until you perhaps ask them a question, well, really, what we aim to do is to give someone an experience of what might be possible.
Yeah.
So when people start to see beyond and see, okay, then it's about inviting them to take tiny steps along. And at the other end of the spectrum, where people are fully lit up, people aren't devoid of challenges over here, because with an abundance of possibility, then it's, well, what do you do with all these options? What do you want to create? And it's interesting to work with people at different points of the spectrum, even seeing clients and how they can go from one end of the spectrum to the other, over the course of, the time that you work with them, whether that's weeks, months, or years.
Yeah, I love it. I love it all, Dave. The thought that occurs to me as we're talking about this is not one I've had quite like this before, and that is coaching is collaboration. Never thought of it that way. Just hadn't really thought of it that way, but it really is collaboration, right?
It truly is. It's two people coming together, having a conversation, sharing ideas. I read a wonderful analogy of kind of coaching recently, or I think I heard it in the sense of consider it almost like a piece of string. When the client is talking and it's starting to coil together, it's the coach's role to perhaps ask the right questions that allows it to unravel. And as it's unraveling, it's just creating a space for the conversation for the client to be able to unravel themselves. And once that's unraveled, so many possibilities, as Dave alluded to, can come out, an abundance almost of ideas, of goals, of things to do.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of it, really. And one simple question, one simple insight, sometimes even saying nothing at all and one simple pause can unravel so many possibilities. It truly is beautiful to see. Would you agree, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I remember I've had a few experiences where, so I act as a mentor for the coaching academy that I trained with, and I've sat in on some coaching triads, peer coaching conversations, and there's a tool that I was taught and that we use called the CREATE model, and the CREATE is an acronym for current reality, explore alternatives, and target energy. But it's a 10-minute conversation. It's a model that's designed for a brief conversation, almost as though you meet someone at a bus stop and you just strike up a conversation and you move them to explore what's going on for them, what might be a different new possibility for them, and then using energy to see what possibility is most inspiring them. But the amount of times where I've sat and people have just been able to unravel their thinking in the space of a really, really brief conversation.
Yeah.
It's incredible, because that's the thing, coaching can happen and occur in so many different shapes and forms. Real value can be created in brief moments as much as they can over longer conversations or longer periods of time. But that's the beauty of dialogue, because when we're stuck in monologue, that thinking only takes us so far.
Yep.
There's something about the act of speaking it out, that then allows the thinking to unravel, so much so that then it creates space for new thinking to emerge.
Yep. And when we have someone else that we're doing that with, then we truly get that 1 + 1 = 11 impact, right? Yeah. And I love it when you're coaching someone and they have those light bulb moments, right? When suddenly the light goes on. I have a dear client out of the Chicago area that we talk about, you can see her light bulb moments from the satellites orbiting.
Yes.
They're just like this boom, it's just like, and it's so fun. Again, part of the ripple, right? Being part of that ripple, helping people not only see the possibilities, but create what it takes to materialize those possibilities. Yeah.
I love the question, given this problem or issue, what do you want to create?
Yes. That's a good one. That's a really good one. Yeah.
I can't lay claim to that one. I think that was a Steve Chandler one, possibly.
Do you have a favorite question, Mohammed, when you're
I wouldn't
coaching?
say a favorite one. I wouldn't say a favorite one because it's purely dependent on the client and the situation at hand. I think there's
Yes.
so many, but focusing on the idea of what one would like to create is so powerful, purely because it puts the ownership into the person that you're asking the question to.
Right.
And once they're able to do that, once they feel like they're in control, once they feel like there's something they can do, and even that word create is such a profound word. It has such a positive connotation that just using that in the right context can really light people up, as Dave likes to say. There was a really interesting point you made prior, I think, Regina, which was really key about kind of the ripple effect. And I think that's so pivotal in any business. I think one thing I love to focus on as one of my own key performance indicators is not passive income, as many people like to talk about, but passive impact. And what I mean by that is, when I first started my business, I had this really strange phenomenon occurring where it happened one particular time with a client who was unemployed when they came to me. We worked together, we worked our magic, he secured a role. And then about 6 months later, when we were having a catch up, he came to me and said, Mohammed, things are going great. I hope you don't mind. I was just about to refer a client to you. But then I started talking to him and I started teaching him all the things you taught me. And then he got a job. So I didn't need to send him to you now. and initially, a part of me was a bit insecure. I thought, I missed out on a client.
Right.
And then it happened again. And then it happened again and again. And I've come to realize that that truly is a really strong indicator of the impact that you can have when
Yes.
clients are able to conceptualize your ideas with so much clarity that they can then convey them to others. That passive impact, those multiple ripples in the pond, almost is incredible. Passive collaboration, it's incredible, really, isn't it? And when you mentioned the whole ripple effect, that was the thought that came to my mind.
I love it because that truly is a ripple, isn't it? It truly is a ripple. And we have so many opportunities to create those ripples. And the more we collaborate with others, the bigger those ripples can be, right? The more lives that get impacted through collaboration. There's a limit to the impact one person can have. But when we combine with others like this collaboration today, we each bring, people want to come and hear what Dave has to say or what Mohammed or Regina have to say. And so, we expand that ripple by the three of us talking about this together. Oh, I love it. The ripple is, it's what I live for, is the ripple effect. It's why I do what I do. So,
awesome.
Yeah. This has been fun, guys. And I love your wisdom. I love what you're doing in the world and your enthusiasm for what you do and the difference that you're making in people's lives. It's just awesome. You got to keep going.
This is the magic of purpose. When you feel like you found your thing, that the energy that comes from that, the knowing, the love, whatever you want to call it. For me, it's just this sustainable, incredible source of energy. Like, this is available to everyone.
Yes.
It just takes work to go and discover it for yourself,
Yeah.
and what your version of this is.
And there are processes for you to figure that out. If you don't know what your purpose is, don't know really what it is that's going to light you up like coaching lights us up, right? There are processes. In fact, I have a course, self-directed course on, finding your purpose and passion. Some steps that you can take to define that. But once you've found that, it's what gets you up in the morning, right? So you agree with me, guys, that business is not always easy. Being an entrepreneur is not always this energizing, right? There are days when it can be a bit of work, but those days are outweighed by all the joy that we have when we're coaching, obviously. But what we do keeps us going when we hit those bumps in the road and they smooth them out faster, right? Because we know what our purpose is. We know we're here for a purpose and to impact lives. Yeah. Dave, I'm curious how you discovered coaching. You said you'd been a DJ for a number of years, and then about 6 years ago you became a coach. What was it that brought you into coaching? I'm curious. It's quite a shift.
Yeah, so my background was, it felt like just a series of transitions. I come from an armed forces family. We moved around a lot. So we transitioned location as a family. In 94, my parents separated, and we went from having the only place to call home being our family all of a sudden taken away. So we had this beautiful childhood one side of that day, and then
Yes.
lots of connection, and then high disconnection following that. But following that, then eventually went to university and tried it. I never really committed to it because it just didn't feel like my thing.
Right.
I was at university for 7 years. I got into DJing. I was on some TV game shows. I had a whole bunch of really amazing experiences, and then finally decided that I needed to go and get a proper job. So found recruitment, and then did that for about 9 years, then transitioned into business development. But around the time, so I lost 5 jobs in a row, and partly because of economic conditions, but also partly, if I'm honest, that my heart was never fully in the thing that I was doing. I always did my best, but
Right.
I could never give my all because it didn't feel like I was doing my thing.
Right.
And then
It didn't
in
light you up.
2016, exactly, yeah. I mean, there was elements of it that did, because
Yeah.
there's a common thread that the work I've always done has had a people aspect, a connection aspect.
Right.
But my desire to help people, I didn't have the tools to really do it in a really deep and impactful way. So in the summer of 2016, I was about to become a father. That was a big deal for me because as a result of my experiences as a teenager, I had this limiting belief that I couldn't become a parent and not create the same painful experiences
Right.
that
Right.
I experienced.
Yeah.
So becoming a parent was me finally overcoming that limiting belief. And also wrapped in that was, I can't be a leader. So, and I was asking myself some deep questions like, what is my purpose? What does light me up? What kind of example do I want to set to my children? And through that, I had this insight that wherever I do, I need to help people for a living. But I just didn't know what that would look like. And then literally 2 months later, I was catching up with an old supplier of mine, and we shared this wonderful lunch in Edinburgh, and he downloaded this 18 months of recent experience on me. And I literally left that conversation like my mind was on fire. I was so buzzing. I thought someone had put something in my drink. I'd never felt so inspired. And he introduced me to the idea of coaching as this thing that you could do outside of sport, because that's the only context I knew coaching in. So then he established the Mindful Talent Coaching Academy. I went and trained with him. And I mean, it didn't take long for me to realize that finally this feels like my thing, because the experiences I got, the ability to learn something and apply it immediately, to deeply impact someone through empowering them, through listening instead of telling and offering advice, that was truly transformational for me. So that's how I discovered coaching, or coaching perhaps discovered me.
Well, you wear it well.
Thank you.
How about you, Mohammed? What brought you into coaching? What was that trigger for you?
It's quite interesting because as you were saying that, I was going to talk about the recent few years in which I read The Prosperous Coach as a book, and by Rich Litvin, and it completely reframed my idea of what coaching could be, similar to Dave, and then began. But I guess for a longer period of time, I've been coaching a lot longer. I just didn't know it. And where that really comes
true
from,
of coaches.
completely. I mean, my background is in medical device sales.
Right.
And it's not your usual typical kind of sales role where you rock up in a briefcase and have a meeting behind a desk. But the surgical type sales roles that I was involved in actually involved going into the operating room, scrubbed up, literally next to the doctors and the surgeons and the nurses whilst they're operating on a patient, understanding how they do the surgery, and then co-creating almost with the surgeon a better way for them to do surgery using the products that my company sold, and then selling them the products on top and then supporting through the training process. But the key distinction there is that I'm not a medic. I don't have a medical background. And with that in mind, with our training, we can never directly tell the surgeon what to do. We can't get involved in the surgery with our hands. And so it requires a very coaching like technique in order to be able to guide and facilitate not only optimal outcomes, but new ideas for the surgeon to do surgery in a better way, which will require the product. So when I put it that way, which I never thought of before today, I guess I've been a coach for a very, very long time. And naturally, it's taken its progression from the operating room into a more virtual or face-to-face space where we're talking about careers rather than blood and bones.
Love it. And I would say you've been collaborating a very long time. I mean, look at the collaboration with those surgeons that you did, how they, I mean, that's totally collaboration, what you just said.
Completely. Yeah. I feel like you develop quite a strong bond with the surgeons themselves, particularly the more inexperienced ones of whom are coming up into the world of medicine the same way I was coming up as a sales representative, because it truly is leaning on each other sort of process. I do remember some distinct occasions where I was working with a surgeon with a new product, maybe for the first time, and perhaps it hasn't gone the way they would have liked it. And there's been times in the operating room where they've turned around to me and almost looked at me and said, "What do I do?" And we have to stay calm and work through it and make sure we get a good patient outcome. And when it does, it truly does feel like a collaborative process where we've come together to get something. And there is something so rewarding about that. That's for sure.
There is. Yes.
I'm just amazed you had the stomach for it.
Yeah, really.
There's no way I could have done that. Like, I mean, when my wife was giving birth, I was like behind the net. I can't look.
And to stand in the operating room.
You'd be so surprised, because I had this perception from TV in which it's very intense. The lights are on. There's a big beep, beep, beep noise of an ECG or something in the background, and it's very, very serious. But it's actually very, very relaxed, especially when you're working with surgeons and nurses who've been doing this for a very, very long time. There's usually music playing, probably usually having conversations about other things, live, what we did on the weekend.
That's amazing to me. They can do that while they're doing this
seamlessly, and honestly, they're so skilled. It's so skilled to be able to do that, all that, and have optimal surgery. It's incredible. So you tend to forget about the blood and the bones after a while, I have to say.
Interesting.
Almost normalized to it all.
Interesting. Wow. Fascinating, both of you. Fascinating. I love it. My goodness.
It's a different form of surgery we perform now. It's we're going right in here.
Yes, indeed. No blood and bones. Oh my goodness. And it's an ongoing surgery to some degree, right? So we make some progress today, and then we get back with them later, and we take it to the next step.
It's more like gardening, because you're constantly, it's in the soil, weeding out the limiting beliefs and planting more, just ensuring that ground is fertile enough so that the thoughts and possibilities can thrive. It's really about creating that environment where they can thrive up here and then external.
Right. Love it. That's very appropriate. Very appropriate. Gentlemen, I have enjoyed both of you so much and having you here, and this has been fun. Looking forward to other conversations that we're going to have. Dave, if somebody wants to get in touch with you after watching this today, how can they reach out to you?
So depending on when they see this, LinkedIn currently, but I do have my website that's been created, which is discodavewin.com. There's a podcast in the works as well, which is going to be called Deeper Than Disco. So that will be emerging in the near future. So those will be the best ways to reach me.
And on LinkedIn, do they find you under Disco Dave Wynn or Dave Wynn? Disco
Disco
Dave.
Dave Wynn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Disco Dave Wynn. All right. Awesome. Mohammed, how can folks get in touch with you?
Likewise, through LinkedIn is probably the best way. My LinkedIn is just my name, Mohammed Kasujee, and I'm always open to a conversation.
Awesome. Fantastic. Again, it has been my extreme pleasure to have you both here today. Thank you again for agreeing to be my guest co-host, Mohammed. Thank you, Disco Dave, for accepting Mohammed's invitation to join us today. And we look forward to seeing all of you on the next collaboration conversations. Be sure and put your comments, your questions for these gentlemen or for myself in the comments. We'd love to hear from you as you've watched this today, the value that you were able to take away from it. Thanks again. We'll see you next time on Collaboration Conversations. Bye for now.
Bye.